You're listening to Cardiff City World on Cymru Sport Radio, live from the Welsh capital. The most interactive football show in Wales, featuring guests, fan opinion, and all the latest news surrounding Cardiff City. Have your say and get in touch now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Cardiff City World, the Welsh Football Hour, live on Cymru Sport Radio. And welcome. We're going to have a bit of a mixed show, a bit later than usual. It's only going to be about an hour or so. We're going to have a bit of a mix. We're going to talk Cardiff City. We're going to talk the future. And, of course, we're going to talk the Welsh squad and the Welsh Under-21 squad, which were really, really interesting, announced today. But it's very important that we also talk about Cardiff City. No sign of a new managerial appointment as of yet. But the week is still early. We're only midweek, as they say, so there's still time. But it's got to be done. It's got to be addressed, and it's got to be addressed fast. The building, etc., needs to be done for the new season. And I think most people agree that Cardiff, whoever the new manager is, need to build around a very talented young squad, both in the first team already, but also some pushing up through the academy system already, representing Wales under-19s. A lot of those have gone into the under-21 squad, as we'll discuss shortly, including Kpakio, who's gone into the first team for Wales. So there's lots to discuss. I want to start first with which was really a typical, almost a snapshot of the social media age, as it were. So I was sort of browsing Twitter, or X as it is, earlier on, just to see if there was any news really on the Cardiff City job, anything popping up, any announcements. And I noticed that people were going crazy for because Biancheri has gone or has been invited to train with Canada. Obviously, he was with the Welsh training group recently. A lot of people tagging the Welsh FA, getting very frustrated and very angry, saying how they've dropped the ball, etc. But you've got to remember, this young man, he obviously was at Cardiff, signed for Manchester United, has been absolutely tearing it up in their under-18s, absolutely tearing it up. I'm not sure what his final stats were, but at one point he'd scored, I think, 16 in 15 games or something, ludicrous. He was doing very, very well. The Italian national team have been watching him both at United and at the Welsh games. Well, obviously Wales have been watching him when he's played for the under-18s. He was invited to the training group, but he also qualifies for Canada. Now, if you are this young man and you qualify for Canada and you qualify for Wales and you qualify for Italy and you haven't been capped, so you have not made any sort of permanent decision on this, why wouldn't you go and see a bit of the world this summer? Why wouldn't you go and train with Canada? Why wouldn't you, if he's invited to do the same, go and train with Italy? I understand people, they get a bit frustrated and they're like, oh no, we don't want to lose out on such a precocious talent. Of course, we all want him to play for Wales and hope that that's his decision. But it is his decision, and I'd imagine, I have no insight into it, other than I would imagine he will weigh up how he feels in terms of which country he feels most affinity to. But then equally, for instance, say his affinity, he felt Italian, for instance, but if he feels that the opportunity is not there long-term to play for the Italy first team, then maybe he would go elsewhere. But ultimately, I think anyone who's tagging him or the Welsh FA saying they've dropped the ball or this, that, and the other, I think it's jumping the gun a little bit, because for all we know, we have no insight into it. He could have spoken to the FAW during the recent training camp, and he could have said, I'm going to go and I've been invited to train with Canada. I've been invited to train with Wales. I've been invited to train with Italy over the summer. I'm going to go and train with all just to experience it, to experience the world. It's one of those things. And I think ultimately, give the kid a break. The Welsh FA have very clearly rated him highly. He's been in the under-18s. They invited him to train with this Welsh group recently. So they obviously rate him. They know how good he is. It's a case of just like a social media snapshot, as I call it. the age of everything's got to be now, instant gratification. And I guess my message to everyone is just relax. Like, he's a young lad, and ultimately he'll do what he feels and what his families are is what they'll decide. They'll decide as a family. He'll decide as an individual. It is what it is. But in terms of these young Cardiff players, I feel very strongly that whoever the manager is coming into Cardiff City, that they need to build around this young squad. Now, it may or may not be that some of those players leave, but as the squad is now, I would like to see us build around Dylan Lawler, Ronan Kpakio, Louis Giles, Joel Bagan, Alex Robertson is young, Ruben Caldwell, Isaac Davis, Kean Ashford, the list, even Yusuf Salic is relatively young. All those are the ones I would build around. And then what I think you need to do is you need to bring in a leader, an experienced central defender to work with those young defenders. You need to bring in an all-action, experienced midfielder, defensive midfielder more than anything, or combative midfielder to lead the way in that front, and then build around it. I think that's vital, whoever the manager is. My worry is that, dependent on who the manager is, they come in and they'll want their own players. They'll want experience. Some managers prefer experience. And, this day and age now, these players, some of these Welsh players are so highly rated that, clubs will try their luck this summer. I'm sure there's clubs sniffing about Dylan Lawler, Joel Caldwell, Ruben Caldwell, all of these players, Alex Robertson, whoever it may be, because they'll think they can get them on the cheap this summer. If Cardiff were to get promoted next year, or even if those players have a standout season in League One, they will be more expensive next summer. Whereas now everyone knows Cardiff are a bit on the ropes. They don't have a manager at the moment, certainly don't have a football structure. They need to raise funds maybe because of the financial losses of getting relegated. So, of course, clubs are going to sniff about those young players. And that's why I don't want to go over old ground. If we had a football structure in place at Cardiff City, then they would be able to be tying down these players, but also looking at other players to bring in already, ready for when the manager is announced. It is really interesting, though, because I've seen a lot of people getting frustrated. I see JT there in the comments is saying about the length of time that it's taken to pick the manager. I think there's two aspects to it. And I think one of those aspects is, yes, it's taken, I think, 5 weeks and they still haven't announced it. But also, I think what you have to understand is that, number one, they were waiting for the seasons to all wrap up on this last weekend gone. If Charlton had lost, I have absolutely zero doubt that Nathan Jones would have been their prime target. So you have to be patient. You have to wait for the season to finish. There's, there's been the foreign candidate has been named today. His season only finished at the weekend. So there's lots of moving parts. There's lots of different things. Am I disappointed that we haven't named a manager yet? Absolutely. I do think that we need to get a manager in and start building, because I think this season is obviously vital, because this season or this summer, I believe that Cardiff can still sell to potential signings. I've forgotten his name. I think it's Campos or something like that. I saw someone was reporting on that earlier on. However, back to the point I was making is this summer you can sell it as a project. You can say, yes, we've been relegated, but we're putting the right manager in place. We've got a real good young squad. Come and sign for us. We'll get promoted and away we go. So people like, say, for instance, a Ricky J. Jones, and for other people, it's real interesting because depending on where your opinion lies, right, I'll find out his name now. I've got it written down somewhere. But depending on who where your opinion lies. Some people think that Aaron Ramsey would be a good choice for a variety of reasons. Some people think you need someone more experienced, like an Ian Evatt or a Des Buckingham. Some people think that Brian Barry Murphy is an excellent, exciting choice. Some people think that you need someone in the middle. it's a really interesting. So Vito Campellos was on the radar, and he spoke to Cardiff this summer. I would imagine he would go higher up than us anyway. I don't think it was ever a particularly realistic option. However, interestingly, I think he was linked during Errol Bullett's sort of time as well. It's a fascinating one. So in answer to Jonathan's question there, Jonathan says, if Nathan Jones was number one target, why would failing to get promoted be more attractive than being promoted? Cost, mate. He's on a big wage, and the fact that they've gone up means that he would be unattainable from a financial point of view, assuming that he'd be willing to drop down. Whereas if they hadn't gone up, the cost was less. So I don't know what to say other than that. I just believe that you got to be a bit patient and understand that there's a lot of moving parts. But equally, if we get into the weekend and we still don't have a manager, then it is, of course, it's problematic, because Cardiff City need to get moving. They need to get the players in to strengthen the squad. They need to move players out, which need to be moved out or want to be moved out. You have to have everyone on board with the right attitude, the right mentality. And, my simple message is, if there's players within the group who don't want to be at Cardiff City for whatever reason, then the club should move them on. So it's equal. It's just equal what it is. I think there's obviously frustration though, because, you look at Plymouth, they've just recently announced a full football operations team. So another team which got relegated have put that in place. And as Cardiff fans, frustration is there, because you're thinking we should have done that 5 years ago, and other teams are doing it. Even look at Reading. They've appointed Joe Jacobson as a co-chief operating officer today or this week. That's an excellent appointment. A real football guy, a real intelligent guy, got a lot of contacts, and he knows football. So they've put a football person in place within their structure. And I think that's the biggest criticism that you can have of Cardiff, is that they don't have that. Will that come with a new manager? I have no idea. It's frustrating as it is fascinating, to be quite honest with you, because you're not quite sure what they're going to do. And ultimately, what it will come down to is who they put in place won't matter if they don't get the recruitment right, and if they don't get the outs right, and they don't put something in place in terms of a football structure. Is so vital. Just as an example, say they decide that Aaron Ramsey is the guy, they've done their due diligence and they've decided, no, we think he's the right person. Even if they give him the experienced coaches that he would like with him, I still think he needs someone above him who is there on a daily basis. Not necessarily just him. I think the club needs a football guy who's experienced and got contacts, who is there day in, day out, and they know what's going on in the squad. They know what their recruitment plan is, both in the short term and the long term. They know what's going on with the academy, which players are, really on the cusp of the first team, which ones could probably do with a loan. What's the plan with those? You need someone there that the manager can, speak to and be with on a daily basis. They just have a little coffee after training, and, who's doing well, who's not, who needs, kick up the backside, who do you think needs to be moved on? Where could we do with some more strengthening, or we're a bit loose, we're a bit light on the right back situation, whatever it may be. That's why it's so vital to have a football person in there day to day who's not on the management team. And my concern is that, whether it's Aaron Ramsey, Brian Barry Murphy, Des Buckingham, whoever, anyone else, if they don't put that personal structure in place, even if they start with a person and then build out from there over the years, that's a start. My worry is that nothing will change. My worry for the club is that not only will that not change, that it'll undermine whoever the manager is, and they won't be able to get the best, or we won't be able to get the best out of them as a manager and as a coach. It's no secret that I've find a Brian Barry Murphy appointment very exciting. but I think he needs the right people around him. And I think, why would you make an exciting appointment like that, who could potentially do so much for your young players and your squad, but then not give him the tools to do said job? I said that about Omar Rhys, like when he took over. Why would you have a manager in there who's very inexperienced, but has got experience working with young players? Why would you not then give him the tools to do the job? Why would you not put a full experienced coaching staff in with him and give him someone working day to day? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But this is where they are now. Some people that were expecting, an announcement today or tomorrow. Personally, I think it'll be more like Friday. But that's just it's just a personal opinion. Nothing to say. Wouldn't be shocked if we had a manager tomorrow or whatever it is. It's one of those things, isn't it? It is interesting that they still haven't made that announcement, or seemingly haven't come to an agreement on who the manager should be. There was strong rumours and bookies last week that Ian Evatt was a done deal. That hasn't materialised. So was there some sort of disagreement? Was there? It just doesn't, it doesn't correlate. But then equally, similar to Errol Bullitt, there was lots of rumours and this and that going around. And then Errol Bullitt just appeared from nowhere. Maybe that will be the case again. I couldn't tell you, but it makes for a fascinating conversation. I spoke a little bit about Des Buckingham yesterday, and I think he'd be an excellent choice. He wouldn't be my choice personally, but he would be an excellent choice. I think Buckingham, Barry Murphy, I think even Ramsey, I think if you give him the right people, would be a good choice. It's one of those things. Like Gary O'Neill, I think, from what I've heard, because I think we might have missed out on him. I think we needed to take a risk on him. He was in the shout for the job when Rhys got sacked. And I believe that we should have taken a risk on him. He wanted it. He wanted the job, not 3 games and then see. He wanted the job. Now, that for me, they should have been brave and taken a risk and gone with it, because he was a Premier League manager. But they didn't. And I do understand why they didn't. Now, I without being involved in the discussions, I don't know how much money he's asking for now to drop down into League One, etc. I wouldn't know, but he was definitely in the conversation at some point. Now, whether he's in the final 5 or whatever you want to call it, I couldn't tell you, but I think he'd be a great choice. And I said to a friend of mine, it must have been 2 weeks ago, the thing with Gary O'Neill is if you appoint him, that's a real statement of intent, because you're appointing a Premier League manager after being relegated to League One. It's a real statement of intent. As would if you'd appointed Nathan Jones, it would have been a very big statement of intent, because you're effectively saying, "Oh, look, you've been promoted to the Championship, Charlton, but we're still going to take your manager." They weren't able to do that, or it doesn't seem that they were able to do that. So it kind of is what it is. Kevin asked an interesting question, which I'll come back to in just a second. But yes, we shall see.
The home of Welsh sport. This is Cymru Sport.
So Kevin Saunders asked the question. He said, where would you realistically be happy finishing next season? So we have to get promoted. We have to, if we're not in the top 6, it's a failure. Simple as that. Even and I say that even if we didn't make one signing and we just kept the squad exactly as it is today, Cardiff City must finish in the top 6 minimum. In my opinion, with the group as it is now, we're 3 players off being ready to really push on. But there is a massive but to that, because I don't think you keep everyone, and I don't think you should keep everyone. There's players with ambitions to play higher up, although where that ambition was last year, I'm not quite sure. There's players who maybe you need to just change the voices in the dressing room. I've said this a few times. I think, if you want to change the culture and you want to bring in leaders, it's not just about bringing people in. sometimes you've got to move people out, and they might not even be people that you necessarily desperately interested in moving out. It might be that you need to just change the voices, have a different feel in the dressing room, because ultimately, I think sometimes a manager's job is over-egged. Yes, they set up the team and they do the drills and stuff with the coaches and whatnot, but a lot of the time, and it's particularly in the successful teams over the years, and if you look back at Cardiff City's best teams over the years, it's the players who've set the standard in terms of how hard they train, how hard they work on the pitch, how hard they, how they treat the playing and things like that. And this is ultimately where we are. Is yes, we might have players who are good at football, but do we have a group overall? And it's not singling anyone out in particular. It's, do Cardiff have a group overall who have the right mentality to kick on and go and really do something special? And not just do something special in terms of getting the club back where they should be in the long term, but in the short term, giving something back to the fans who you've let down over the last couple of seasons on the pitch, particularly last season. Those players really should be held accountable for last season, because too many of them didn't turn up. Too many of them didn't have the right attitude, and too many of them, for lack of a better term, froze under the pressure of the situation. And I think ultimately that's why you need to change the culture. That doesn't just come by dropping a new manager in there. You have to address everything. You have to address, as we talk about, I've got this rebuild series on the chat on Cardiff City World. Episode 4 is coming on Friday. We must address every aspect of the football club. Cardiff City are behind in almost every metric: financially, medically, recruitment, on the pitch, coaching, manager. Everything is behind the times. Football structure, recovery, the lot. So they have to address that. But ultimately, even if you've got a good owner or a good board or a good footballer, a good football structure, you can't address everything at once. That's difficult without chucking absolute millions at it. But at least make an effort to address the obvious. And that's what I think Cardiff City fans are so frustrated. It's everyone can see that the problem with the football structure and not having a day-to-day football person running the club for so many years has left us where we are. And I think, I understand people's frustration with the urgency thing. And that's what I was going to say. There's two sides to it earlier. So, of course, the season finishing, the playoffs, etc., that comes into the delay in the management decision. But you can take it back, as I think Evan says there. Take it back to last season. How many opportunities did Rhys get to, the club get to change the manager? Well, it clearly wasn't working. Now, whether you put that on Rhys or you put that on the lack of structure around him, or you put that on the players, which I think is a fair thing, whoever you would, or you just put it on the whole of them as a general thing, collectively. The fact is that at numerous points throughout the season, there was opportunities to make the change. There was opportunities to change the manager, after the Oxford game, international breaks, and not leave it till 3 games to go, which was just an embarrassment, however you look at it. And that's not on Aaron Ramsey or the people who came in at the end. At the end of the day, they did 3 games. We were pretty much down as it was. The club acts slowly. Now, is part of that on Vincent's hand? Yes, of course it is, because everything goes through, every decision is his decision. However, if there's a football structure in place, it is a lot easier. Apologies, that was my cat jumping around. If there's a football structure in place, then those decisions become easier, they become quicker, because you've got football people making those decisions. Whereas I would ask this question of the Cardiff City board and owner is, with Errol Bullitt, say he was Mehmet Dalman's choice, is Mehmet Dalman always going to be reluctant to pull the plug on him because he's his choice and he doesn't want to get the blame as such from Vincent Tan? Then you've got Kenneth Cho. Was he reluctant to pull the plug on Rhys because he had gone, the players had gone to him and asked to keep Rhys on? Or was it Vincent Tan because he had picked to stick with Omar Rhys? So he was stubborn and he wanted to make sure or be the one that picked the manager to keep us up. I really don't know, but I wonder, again, by not having that structure in place and that person in place who's making those football decisions, they've all got their own separate agendas to a certain extent because they want to be the one who's picked the right man. Whereas actually, if you just delegate it to someone who knows what they're doing and you have a structure in place to delegate other teams and duties, then of course it becomes a more run and a well-oiled machine. That's why it's an embarrassment. Cardiff City should never have been relegated last year. They had, not only was the squad good enough to stay up, yes, it was unbalanced, yes, there was holes in it, not saying it should have won the league by any means, but they certainly shouldn't have been in the bottom of the league. They could have addressed that numerous times throughout the season. And I think ignoring that and pretending that it's all Omar Rhys's fault is embarrassing. I said on the day that he was appointed till the summer, if they do not give him a coaching staff and they do not give him someone experienced with him, they are setting him up to fail and setting him up to be the scapegoat. And then they sack him with 3 games to go. They only did that to put all the focus on him when we got relegated and try to take the focus off of the club and the board and the people who've made those decisions and refused to make decisions all along. And ultimately, until they address that same issue that's been there for years and years and years, it's very difficult to see change unless they get whoever they pick as a manager. They get particularly lucky that all the players really like him. He's a very good manager. He's got very good coaches, and they all remember that they're decent at football. And that ultimately, that might be a place, and we might be lucky. But until we address the issues of being behind on every metric, and I include social media and all these other aspects of running a football club in the Championship or League One or in the EFL, all of these aspects, Cardiff City are behind. Now, is social media, or the way that social media is used in a 125th year celebration, is that relevant to the club on the field? No, it's not. But it is relevant to how many fans you get in the stand and how many fans are engaged with your football club. And they all has a knock-on effect on everything. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this summer plays out. Obviously, you've got players like Dylan Lawler was out of contract, but they've taken an option for an extra year, so he's got another year, and they're currently negotiating. But I mean, you wouldn't blame people like Dylan Lawler, Kpakio, all these young guys who are really highly rated, who now have a year on their contract. You would not blame them if they're looking to see what the club does next. Who do they appoint? Do they address the issues that they haven't addressed for so many years? Because if they don't, or they don't get the managerial choice right, and they don't change anything about what's caused the issues over the years, then those young players' agents are going to be going, do you know what? This is not a club that is being proactive and looking at their issues. Yes, it's your hometown club, but you can go and play in the Championship. You can go and play in the Premier League and play first team football and have a manager who knows what he's doing and a coach and a club that knows what they're doing, and they're building for the future, and they've got this, that, and the other. It's difficult to see. So for me, it's not as simple as, get a manager in and everything will be all right. Get whoever. Get Pep in. You can get Pep in, and even then, until they address the other issues around the football club, it won't work. And that is always going to be the case until they address those issues. That's just my opinion. People might disagree. I'm sure people at the football club would disagree. is my opinion, and I'd love to hear yours. So let me know what you think. It's all very, very difficult because, I mean, there's other aspects to it all. You know, like I see a lot of people's blaming everything on Mehmet Dalman, which again is fine. It's your opinion, but I think he's owed money by the football club, so I don't think he's going to be going anywhere anytime soon. I don't anticipate any changes to the board. What I would advocate for is putting football people below them to make the football decisions. Let the board make the business decisions. Let the football people make the football decisions and see where that goes, because the way we're doing it now doesn't work. And it's literally the definition of insanity in it, just doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's a problem. And that's where the problem is. And ultimately, that will continue to be the problem until it's addressed. Next up, we're going to talk all about the those young players that we mentioned earlier, and have a bit of fun while we do it.
Wow! What a goal!
Be a part of the action and help Cymru Sports to cover more games across the country.
It's 3-2! Oh my words! Where did that come from?
Your business can sponsor a commentary, reaching football fans with your message at the same time as supporting our live commentary of Welsh sports. Contact us today by emailing advertising@cymrusports.cymru.
Welcome back. This is the Welsh Football Hour, Cardiff City World, for a little hour. It's slightly changing up in the summer, just where there's a little bit less going on. So we're doing slightly shorter shows. Today, we're talking Cardiff City, the lack of manager, the lack of problems, or the host of problems. And we're also going to talk about those young players in the Welsh squad. We'll have the Cymru Amber of the podcast will be coming back next week as well with Harry, which I'm really looking forward to catching up with Harry, getting his opinions on the variety of different things. So yeah, look, again, and another example of, even if you put the best of plans in place, sometimes it still doesn't work. Music is going to Schalke, who's, that puts Plymouth's plans up the Swanee, so to speak. But I mean, you'd like to think because they've got a football structure in place, they'll have a plan B and a plan C, and so on. So it'll be interesting. Be interesting how it plays out. So what I want to talk about next is a bit of a mixture of Cardiff and, of course, Wales. A lot of the highly rated Welsh players who are in the under 18s, 19s have been promoted to the under 21s this time round, including highly rated goalkeeper Luke Armstrong. Be very interesting to see if he gets any time. Obviously, you've got Lewis Benjamin and Evan Watts, two good keepers there as well. But Luke Armstrong is very highly rated, and Cardiff really like him, which is why I wonder whether that's why we're kind of holding on to Howworth and Alnwick, in the hope that by the time we get back into maybe the championship or whatever, that Armstrong's ready. He's very young, so it's tricky, but it's great to see him in the 21s. Louis Giles is in there. Another, I'd be expecting Louis Giles to play first team football this year, week in, week out, to be honest with you. Dylan Lawler. I would be astounded if Dylan Lawler is not in Cardiff City's first team this year. Maybe he starts the season on the bench, but I would be shocked if he's not in the, on the bench week in, week out at the start, and then works his way into the squad, if not starting straight away. I'd be astounded, because, they are negotiating a new contract with him. Whether he signs it, I would imagine, I have no insight into it, I'm guessing, but whether he signs it, I would imagine would be whether he gets first team opportunities this year. And once he gets those first team opportunities, I believe he'll go on and easily become a regular. He's a very gifted footballer, very clever footballer. Yes, he's not perfect. He will make mistakes. He's young. Young players make mistakes by definition. They're learning, and they don't have the consistency. But my, oh my, what a player. So he should be playing week in, week out. And it'd be interesting, again, if we do get a manager who likes the three at the back, which a couple of them who've been linked sort of do like a three at the back system. They're all kind of different depending on the manager. That does allow you to integrate a Dylan Lawler and then bring in a real experienced centre-back and still play either Joe Bagan or Darland or, Will Fish, all young centre-backs. So it allows you to do that. But, obviously you might end up with Dylan Lawler in the 2 anyway. He's that good. I compared him to Danny Gabardon when he played against Villa, because I know he's not there yet by any means, but his composure and his positioning is way ahead of someone who's so young. And I really believe that it would be a mistake on Cardiff's part to not build around these young lads. You've got, for instance, if they do play 3 at the back, whoever the manager is, you can get a Louis Giles at wing back. You can get Louis Giles' delivery from crosses. You can almost see it straight away, like Yusuf Salic crying out for people who cross the ball. That's why we've been saying get a proper winger. If Louis Giles is out there getting forward, he's whipping the ball in. Yusuf Salic is that's his bread and butter. Again, I mentioned Dylan Lawler, but there's others. There's Joel Colwell returning from his loan. And I know some people were critical of his loan spell, changing from Cheltenham in League 2, where he was tearing it up, to then going to Exeter, where he maybe didn't play as much. But he did play. He played a bit at right back. He played a bit of midfield. He's a very versatile player. He did play at League 1, and you'd expect him to play for Cardiff at League 1, or certainly be in the squad. So that's another one. That's 3 youngsters there straight away who we've discussed in the 21s. Luke Armstrong's probably not ready for first team football, but by any means at the moment. But he's talented and he's gifted, and I'm chuffed to beans for him to be in the under 21 squad. Louis Giles, Dylan Lawler, Joel Colwell, maybe Troy Perrick too. All should be in and around that first team. I wonder whether Troy Perrick goes out on loan simply because of the amount of young players and the amount of young players already in the first team squad, one of which we're going to talk about in just a second. So I do wonder whether Troy goes out on loan. However, a lot of it might come down to how they do in pre-season, how they fare against, grown men, really physical players in League 1. You got Kean Ashford, who's had his breakout season last year, did exceptionally well. You'd expect him to kick on now. And again, such a versatile player. He can play in the 10, he can play up front, he can play wide, works hard, cares about Cardiff City. These are the players who you build around. You put experienced players with them to bring them along. I always get this poor guy's name wrong, but he's a super talented guy. Naya Kahawa, again, another one in back, up to the 21s. So chuffed for these boys, because what an opportunity for them. It's a group game. It's not a meaningless friendly where they're chucking a load of youngsters in to give them some time. This competitive game, and they're in that under 21 squad, and they deserve it, by the way, because of their performances at under 18 level for Wales and for Cardiff. And a lot of those lads you'd expect to be in and around the Cardiff City first team. And then obviously Ronan Kpakio, Craig Bellamy spoke real highly of him, and even mentioned that they tried to sign him when he was at Burnley, which is, great to hear in terms of how he rates him. And it's such a shame that Ronan got that injury last year, because he was just starting to find his feet, just starting to look good. And then that injury just took his momentum away. But I think he'll come back stronger this year. And obviously he's done something right within that training group to be recalled. And it's great to see his name in there with the likes of Nico Williams and Jay De Silva and Connor Roberts. And look, in my opinion, and me and Harry have talked this to death on the Wales podcast, we felt that right-hand side with Connor Roberts was a bit of an issue for Wales. Ronan Kpakio maybe gets the opportunity against Liechtenstein. If he does, he's got to make it his own. Like I was saying about Rocco Simic yesterday, when you get that opportunity, you have to make yourself undeniable. And if you don't get that opportunity, like Rocco Simic at Cardiff City or Ruben Colwell at Welsh level, you have to make yourself undeniable. You have to be so fit, so fast, so ready, so sharp. Your performances as well, your stats, everything's got to be so good that whoever's picking the team, whether it's Wales or whether it's Cardiff, they cannot ignore you. That's the attitude that these young players should have. And, congratulations to Ronan Kpakio. He has a real opportunity because I do think he'll get some game time. Judging by how Craig Bellamy spoke about him, I would be quite surprised if he doesn't get game time against Liechtenstein at home. And then it's up to him to be able to perform as well as he can. I'm excited by it. And equally, I'm excited because I'm going as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. And it's just one of those things, isn't it? But so Sugs, we talked about Biancheri earlier. He hasn't made a decision to go and play for Canada. He's just gone to the training camp. He could effectively he went to the Welsh training camp the other week. He could go to the Canada training camp, and then he could go to the Italy training camp. He hasn't made a decision to play for them. He's just been invited to take part in a training camp, which, why wouldn't he? I think it would be, I think it's absolutely a great thing to do. And look, some of the players at Cardiff City are going to leave, first and foremost. I don't know who, but some of them will leave. It's just a byproduct of summer. Obviously, you have the players out of contract, but there's someone will get sold, or maybe a couple of people will get sold. And then it will come down to, does the manager trust the young players to be the replacements, or does he want someone in there with them? So, for instance, the example I would use is, if Cardiff were to sell Perry NG this summer, would the new manager rely on Ronan Kpakio as first choice with Spires as the backup? He's very, very young, and I think it's a risk. But if you look purely on their qualities, I'd be excited by it. But it's a lot of pressure on those young lads. And what you've also got to remember is the pressure that comes at Cardiff is going to be ginormous this year. Number one, all teams are going to be absolutely up for playing against Luton, against Cardiff, against Plymouth. They want to beat those teams who are coming down. And I think you've got to be careful in how you manage it. I think just going, right, we're going to play Louis Giles on the left, Kpakio on the right, Dylan Lawler in middle, Joe Colwell in the centre mid with Alex Robertson, and we're going to play Ruben Colwell and Ashford on the wing, Salic up front. Very, very exciting. I would love to see it. But it's a lot of pressure on those lads, because if it starts going wrong, you get the moans and the groans. Yes, I think young players will get a bit more leeway from fans, but people get on them on social media, and they have one or two bad games at the start of the season. Some people will be like, not good enough, we're going down, if this is what we're like, we're going down. Like, they won't give them time. The cool-headed and the realistic will of course give the young players time and be with them, because we all would love to see all these homegrown lads come up and be our own sort of class of 92, if you like, where they all come through as a group and we go on and be, get promoted and be successful. Everyone would like to see that as Cardiff City fans. And I'd imagine, deep down, other fans of other Welsh clubs would love. If you're a player at a Welsh league club and you see all these Welsh players coming through at Cardiff, that gives you hope that maybe maybe I can get picked up and come through there or whatever. Like, it's good for Welsh football. And I think it was not last season gone, but the season before. Was it Southampton when Raheem Conte and Louis Giles and a few others came on? And when they came on in that particular game, Cardiff were a bit disjointed. We looked lacking in energy. And then all of a sudden, you had that injection of enthusiasm and aggression and youth and pace. And I was going to say the elderly players, the senior players who had previously looked a bit leggy, all of a sudden looked like that enthusiasm was infectious. That mentality is infectious. They also, these young players, a lot of them, they don't have the wounds, mentally speaking, from last year of being relegated, because they weren't involved. So they're going to go into it with just this pure passion and enthusiasm. And I think you've got to build around that. I don't want to build around certain players who haven't had the right attitude and who have not turned up. I want to build around exciting young players who care about Cardiff City and want what's best for the football club and have the enthusiasm and the mentality and the thought process to be the best that they can possibly be every day. Now, some of these players who are all coming through now, the academy, some of them will make it, some of them won't. Some of them will be good enough, some of them won't. Some of them will have the right attitude, and some of them will, find distractions and make wrong decisions along the way. That's part of growing up. That's part of being an adult. That's just is what it is. It's just that they're footballers and that's their job. I would just like to see, and this is one of the reasons why I like the feeling, or I like the thought of a Brian Barry Murphy coming in, because I think he'll get the best out of those young players, but he also knows how to manage a young player's development. He knows how to, when they need to be taken out of the limelight, when they need a rest, because you don't want to blow them all out. I saw a really interesting piece earlier about Lamine Yamal. He's 17. He's played so much football this year. Are we seeing his peak now at 17? And will he sort of tail off and burn out? I worry. Of course, he's 17. He's so young. And you have to find the balance, I think. But I would be lying if I didn't want to see whoever the Cardiff City manager is building around Dylan Lawler, Joel Bagan, Louis Giles, Joel Colwell, Ruben Colwell, Kian Ashford, even Manny Barton's one who's really impressed me, Yusuf Salic, Alex Robertson. They're the players I want to build around. They're the players, to me, if I was in charge, they're the players who are unsellable. It's the senior voices that I would like to see a bit of a change in. And it's not to say like they've let us down, or they're rubbish, or this, or they've got a bad attitude. I just think from their point of view and from the club's point of view, that a change might be the refresh that we need. So for them, it's going somewhere different environment. And for Cardiff as a club, it's a different culture, different leaders, different voices in the dressing room. And if you make sure you bring in a manager who knows how to manage that sort of atmosphere, but expects the highest of standards, I think that's the one thing for me, is I want a manager, whoever it is, who expects the highest of standards from his players daily. Professional level standards daily, and they have to have the right mentality. And if they don't have the right mentality, then thank you, but you're not for us. And that's why the recruitment is so important, because it's not just about if a player is good enough. It's, will they fit in with the group? Do they have the mentality to do what we expect of them from a professional point of view? Do they have any distractions off the field? Do they have a bad attitude? Do they think they've already made it because they're 20 and they get paid 8-10 grand a week or whatever? Are they happy with that? Or do they want to strive and push on and be better? That's where the recruitment comes into it, and your research, and you're really deep diving into every single player you sign. Do I think we do that now? If I'm honest, I don't. If I'm honest, I don't think that. This is just an opinion, it's not based on anything which I know for a fact, but it feels like we don't even look into that side, the off the field stuff. It feels like we look at whether they're good at, look at a couple of clips and, oh yeah, there we go. Do they want to come? That's just opinion. It is what it is. I look at, I was speaking to a friend of mine again about Ricky J. Jones. Ricky J. Jones is available. He was interested in coming to Cardiff in January. Now, whether he'd still be interested is another thing. Does he want to stay in League One? But he hasn't signed with anyone. Now, his wages probably be a lot higher because he's got Birmingham and probably other clubs interested in him. He's got, you'd probably have to pay him a nice signing on fee to stay in League One and stuff like that. But if you think he's the right player and the right attitude, and he's someone who could change the whole dynamic of your attack and your group, and paying him a nice wage and a signing on fee is still cheaper than buying a similar player, and maybe you move someone out who's on big wages to cover that, is it a good decision? Well, the recruitment team and the right director of football or something, they could be doing all that research now. They could be speaking to his team and saying, look, are you still interested in coming? You know, we understand that we're asking you to stay in League One, hopefully for just another season. What sort of price would we be looking at in terms of a signing on fee, blah, blah. And so when the new manager comes in, you can go, right, we got him ready to go. We'd have to pay him a little bit more, but if we move this person out, that covers that anyway. And it just feels like everything's on the back burner. So, like, they couldn't sort the manager out until the season's over. Right, fine. Now they're doing the manager thing. Then they'll do the recruitment thing or the new contracts and stuff like that. And then they'll look at who they're going to sell. Like, you always feel like you're a few weeks behind. Now, I'm sure that Paddy, the boys, and whoever else have, you know, I'm sure they've been working hard over the last few weeks to get things in place and whatnot. But it's very difficult for them because what are you preparing for? Are you prepared? Because the squad as it is it good enough? Probably it's a bit unbalanced. But is it only unbalanced if you play a certain way? If you play a different system, it might be the perfect balance. If you want to play one system, it might not be balanced. So it is difficult for them. And I think having the manager in place now will allow, I would like to think that they're ready to go, if that makes sense. So that as soon as that manager's in, they can have a meeting and go, right, we've looked at these players. Obviously, it depends on how you want to play. And if you think this player is good enough, we've got this list of players who would like to leave, or we're thinking of selling because of X, Y, and Z. It's proactive, not reactive. And as I've said time and time again, it very much feels like Cardiff City is a reactive club, not a proactive club. And we have to get that changed. Bringing in someone like an Aaron Ramsey as the manager with the right people around him, or a Brian Barry Murphy with the right people around him, is someone who can put a vision and strategy in place that can work in the short term and the long term, provide elite coaching, expect elite level standards, but also they have to be able to sell their vision not only to the fans, to the club to get the job, but they need to sell it to the players as well. They need to have the players buying in. Now, this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because if it's, let's say, all the due diligence is done and they come back, Aaron Ramsey's the right guy, as long as we get X, Y, and Z in place around him. Okay, let's just use that as an example. Well, he should know which players didn't train hard enough last year, which players weren't really at it for the battle, which players weren't really at it from a quality point of view. So he should be able to hit the ground quite quickly, hit the ground running quite quickly and go to say to the recruitment team or whoever it may be, I would like to move this player, and this player out. I would like a new right back, a new this, a new one, whatever. A newer manager who hasn't been involved last year will either have to rely on second-hand information given to him by the people who were there last year, or he has to give everyone in the club or in the squad a fresh start. You've got the summer and the pre-season now to show me that you want it, show me how good you are, show me all the different things. And I think that's an issue in itself, because I feel that there's certain players in there who can be good for a couple of games, but they haven't got the consistency to do it over a full season. Now, that might be a fitness issue, that might be an attitude issue, that just might be a quality issue, it might be an injury issue, whatever it may be. But a new manager needs that information. So what am I going to say? We circle all the way back to having a football person in the club who would be able to give all of that knowledge to the manager on day one would be vital, wouldn't it? And I think that's one of the biggest problems that Cardiff City have and will continue to have until they change it, essentially. I'm going to have a look at some of the comments just to finish off. I did address a couple as we were going, but yeah, I get a bit distracted if I try and do too much at once. Holton says Lawler's got a year left, so he'll be gone. Kpakio also out of contract. Yeah, they've both been at that. I think they both had their years options taken, and the clubs, as far as I know, the club's negotiating with both of them. They're the future, mate, and they should be tying them down, and they both should be playing football, first team football now. Absolutely, 100%. Jonathan says, how many bad decisions do the board need to make before their jobs are unattainable? How much money do they need to lose before questions get asked? Surely you're an owner that cares by now. Well, those decisions, mate, are the owners ultimately. And this is, again, the problem is that every decision has to go through the owner. Every decision is made by the owner. And this is why I think you get these little delays, because they'll make a recommendation or they'll say we should do this, and then he takes a few days to think about it. Then he come back and go, no, I don't want that, and then they've got to come up with something different, and that's with everything. So I do think it's an issue, but I don't think it's as simple as blame the board, because they don't make the decisions. The owner does. Jonathan says, do you think Lawler, Fish and Darling could work and develop as a back three if we keep them all? They're all mobile and decent on the ball. I do. I think Darland, I would like to think Darland will get used to the physicality now of the EFL. I thought he struggled a little bit, and he let it get in his head a little bit then and started making silly mistakes that he hadn't made early on. But he'll be used to that now. And I'd imagine, well, if I was him and if I was his agent and if I was his family and I was his coaches or the club, I'd have been telling him, get in the gym over the summer, now make yourself nice and strong and be ready for that physicality. I also agree with this comment from Sue. We need to try and stick with the centre-back pairing so they can form a partnership. We didn't do that last year. Yeah. And I think actually when you look at it last year, it was only towards the end of the season, there is no coincidence, I don't think, that the one standout centre-back in the second half of the season was probably Will Fish, because he was playing most weeks. I agree with you, though, that whether it's a back three or a back two, they kind of need to keep it. I know it's full fashion in football to rotate, but I would like to see the spine of the team be pretty regular. A regular centre-back pairing, or at least two out of the three. Regular midfield pairing, regular striker, and just have that spine, regular keeper. So that the spine is strong, and then if you're going to rotate, you rotate those wide players, those attacking players. Be interesting. Jonathan Davis says, the midfielder I'm more worried about is Eli King, who looked very promising, but seems to have tailed off. Didn't really hear much about him last year. I believe I will do a bit of digging, and I might do some videos on some of the loan players, like the player, or should I say, some of the Cardiff players who went out on loan. And maybe we do a little video on each of them, have a look at how they did and a bit of a deep dive into that, get some feedback maybe from fans and people of the clubs, because I would like to have a look. I think he did all right. Eli King, if I'm good off memory and my memory's bad, so that could be completely wrong. But yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think, well then, Jonathan, just give me some content for next week. We'll have a look at the loan players and what could be the plan for him next, because Joel Colwell played League One and League Two football last year, so he should be ready, really, if he's as highly rated as everyone says he is, which he quite clearly is. Did a great job at Cheltenham, so it'll be fascinating to see if he now kicks on, because that would look, if Joel Colwell comes into Cardiff City's first team this year, this summer, this season, then you have to give the club credit for his pathway into it. Played for the 18s, 21s, then he went on loan to Cheltenham for half a season, went on loan to Exeter for half a season, and then he comes into the Cardiff first team and tears it up. Then they got this pathway absolutely spot on. Now, whether that happens is another question. I do not know. I don't know where he is. I saw a bit of him at Cheltenham. I didn't see much of him at Exeter, but we'll have a proper good look at it. Sue says they need to be mentally coached as well as physically. 100%, mate. And Suze, I think that is is spot on. Is one of the, I think I made that point in the Brian Barry Murphy video about him being a very emotionally intelligent coach and how to get the best out of players and get them mentally prepared for high pressure situations. Sue's also said there should be no lack of hunger, as there are lads play for the badge and want to prove themselves. Yeah, that's the thing with the younger ones. Paul says, if we had an age inside, I'd be more worried, but we have some good quality with a great potential youth and young members, but we have more depth in the 21s and 18s coming through. The future is great. Yeah, he's getting the senior players right, I think, now, and getting the balance of the squad right, because we have a massive squad. Obviously, getting rid of some of the, or losing some of the out-of-contract players will bring the squad numbers down as well. Jonathan says Michael Owen's the biggest case of used and abused early and burnt out. Yeah, and that's what I mean about you've got to protect these young players. And I worry about Lamine Yamal because he is a kid, he's a child, like, and he's played so much football this year at high pressure, high intensity. And look, he may go on and be a true great, like Messi, Ronaldo, Pele, Maradona, and Yamal may be one of those names. He might, but he's a child and he has played so much football that I genuinely worry that he might kind of burn out. So I'm going to be finishing up now. It's only supposed to be an hour. It's been a pleasure, as always, to talk to you. I'm trying to get a guest on for next week's radio show. I'm trying to get half and half. So we'll have like half an hour with an ex-Cardiff player, and I'm hoping half an hour with a Welsh League player. But we'll see how it works. Tomorrow morning for Cardiff City World and Ace Podcast Nation patrons and members, there's a breakfast show at 10 a.m. So tune in for that. And there's also a competition to be announced on the Flower Hour quiz night tomorrow evening. So tune in for that. Lots of stuff coming up. We've got more videos. We'll also have videos on the new Cardiff City manager. We'll be looking at their tactics and how they play. And we'll also be looking at the Cardiff City loan players. And don't forget the rebuild episode number 4 on Friday evening. As always, a big thank you to you all for tuning in, whether you tuned in on Cymru Sport Radio, Cymru Sport Facebook page, whether it was Cardiff City World or Twitter, whatever it may be. It is always my pleasure to chat to you guys, and I appreciate your opinions and your time. From a Welsh point of view, I really look forward to the next couple of qualifiers, both for the 21s and the first team. Super exciting time for Welsh football. And of course, from Cardiff's point of view, let's hope that we have a manager soon. Indeed, take care, and I'll keep the faith, my friends, as always, and I'll see you in a bit.